It was the middle of June, just after 8 p.m., when I decided to go night fishing for the first time. I'd been working long weeks at the auto shop, and the quiet of the lake always helped clear my head. There's something about water at night. It's calm, almost hypnotic. You can hear every ripple, every frog, every breath of wind through the trees. But that night, the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt, I remember pulling up in my old pickup truck, headlights sweeping across the dark shoreline. The lake was mostly empty, except for one small aluminum boat tied up near the dock. It looked abandoned, rocking slightly against the current. I thought maybe someone had left it there after sunset. I set up my gear, cracked open a beer, and sat at the edge of the dock. The moonlight reflected faintly on the water, just enough to see a few feet out. I cast my line, leaned back, and listened. For a while, everything was still just the rhythmic sound of crickets and the occasional splash of a fish breaking the surface. Then I heard something. It was faint, maybe a few dozen yards across the lake. A soft plunk, like someone had dropped something heavy into the water. I leaned forward, squinting into the darkness. Nothing. Maybe a turtle. Maybe a branch. I ignored it and went back to my beer. But a few minutes later, it happened again, plunk. Then again, rhythmic this time. Like footsteps, the sound was coming closer. I tried to focus my eyes across the water, and that's when I noticed it. A faint light, like a lantern, slowly drifting on the surface. My first thought was that someone else was out there, maybe fishing from a small boat, but there hadn't been any other cars at the lot when I arrived. The light moved in slow, deliberate lines, side to side, almost like someone was scanning the surface. I called out, "Hey, you all right out there?" No response. The light froze in place, then turned directly toward me. I could feel my chest tighten. It wasn't a lantern, it was a flashlight. And whoever held it was now pointing it right at me. The beam held still, unmoving, just watching.
"Hello?"
I called again, louder this time. "You need help?" Still, nothing. The light didn't move for almost a full minute. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it clicked off total darkness. That silence again. Heavier this time. I sat there frozen, waiting for something. A sound, a splash, anything. But the lake had gone dead quiet. Even the frogs had stopped. I decided that was enough fishing for one night. I packed my tackle box, reeled in my line, and started walking back toward the truck. The dock creaked under my boots. I was halfway up the shore when I heard it again. The water moving, but not randomly. It sounded like footsteps waiting. Slow, careful steps. I turned back toward the dock, trying to adjust my eyes. The moonlight caught something pale, moving near the edge of the water. At first, I thought it was just the reflection of the moon. But then it rose out of the water. It was a man. He was waist-deep, facing the shore. His clothes clung to him, dripping. But what froze me was his face. He was smiling, a wide, unnatural grin, stretching too far. And in his right hand, he held the same flashlight, turned off now, hanging limply by his side. I yelled out. I don't even remember what I said, and ran to my truck. I threw my gear in the back, started the engine, and peeled out of there as fast as I could. When I looked back in the rearview mirror, the man was still standing in the water, watching my taillights disappear. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept replaying that grin, that stillness, that eerie calm like he was waiting for something. The next morning, I went back to the lake. Not because I wanted to, but because part of me needed to know I hadn't imagined. Italiano. The dock looked the same, but something caught my eye near the shallow end of the water. It was that same aluminum boat I'd seen the night before, but this time, it wasn't empty. Inside it were 2 fishing rods, a half-empty tackle box, and a pair of muddy boots. One of them still tied to a human foot. I called the police immediately. They cordoned off the area and started dragging the lake that afternoon. I told them everything about the light, the man in the water, the smile. They didn't say much back, just exchanged quiet looks as they worked. 2 days later, an officer came by my shop to update me. They'd found a body, a man in his late 40s, drowned. From the look of it, he'd been dead for nearly a week before I went fishing that night. The part that messed me up the most, they said his body was found wearing only one boot. I asked about the other one, the one in the boat. The officer nodded. "Yeah," he said quietly, "that was his." I asked if they ever figured out who was holding the flashlight that night. He looked at me, expression flat. There was no flashlight found at the scene. I quit fishing after that, haven't gone near a lake since. But sometimes, when I can't sleep, I still hear that sound, the soft plunk of water, moving closer. And every time, I wonder, what if it wasn't him in the water that night? What if it was something else, wearing his face? I used to go fishing with my dad every summer when I was a kid. We had this old wooden dock behind our cabin up in northern Michigan. It stretched a few feet into the lake, and every evening around sunset, we'd sit side by side, tossing our lines in, talking about nothing and everything. After he passed away, I kept the tradition going. It made me feel close to him, even though he was gone. The cabin was quiet, the lake still, and those moments alone helped me clear my head. Last July, I went back for the first time in almost 2 years. The place hadn't changed much. Same dusty furniture, same creaky floors, same smell of pine and damp wood. I remember standing on the dock that first evening, just watching the sunset bleed into the water. It was beautiful, but something felt different. The lake was too quiet. There were no birds, no splashes, not even the faint hum of mosquitoes. It was like the whole place was holding its breath. I shrugged it off, chalked it up to being rusty after a long time away, and started setting up my gear. I baited the hook, cast my line, and waited. About 10 minutes later, I felt a tug. Not huge, but strong enough to bend the rod slightly. I smiled. First catch of the season. I started reeling it in, slow and steady. But then, it stopped. The line went slack. Primera pulled it up, and the hook was empty. The bait was gone. I rebaited and cast again. Another tug, another miss. It happened 3 more times. That's when I started to get annoyed. Something was taking my bait, but not getting caught. I leaned closer to the edge of the dock, squinting down into the dark water. The sun had dipped below the trees now, and the lake was reflecting deep orange and black. I could barely see anything below the surface. And then, I saw bubbles, a slow trail of them, rising up right beneath where my line was cast. I thought maybe it was a turtle or a catfish, but the bubbles were too big, too deliberate. I reeled in fast, but before I could lift the line out of the water, something yanked it. Hard. I almost lost the rod. The pull was powerful, way stronger than any fish I'd ever caught there. My heart started pounding. Whatever it wasn't normal. I tightened my grip, dug my heels into the dock, and started to reel in. That's when I saw it just for a second. A pale hand. It broke the surface. Fingers curled around my line, then slipped back beneath. I froze. My mind couldn't process what I'd just seen. I thought maybe I imagined it a trick of the water, the light. But the ripples spread across the surface, real as day. And then, slowly, I saw the hand again. This time it wasn't grabbing my line. It was reaching up, reaching for the dock. I stumbled back, tripping over the tackle box. The rod clattered to the boards. I scrambled to my feet, staring at the water. The hand disappeared. The bubbles stopped. The surface went still. I waited, heart racing, listening for anything. But the lake was silent again. I wanted to leave. Every part of me screamed to grab my stuff and go back inside, but I didn't. I convinced myself it had to be something logical. Maybe a log, or a branch floating weirdly. Maybe even an animal. So I stayed. Big mistake. I sat there, trying to calm my breathing, staring at the black water. That's when I heard a faint scraping sound. Not on the dock, but under it. Wood shifting, boards creaking like someone crawling underneath me. The dock was old but sturdy, built low to the water. There was maybe 2 feet of space under it. I got on my knees, grabbed my flashlight, and pointed it down between the gaps in the planks. At first, I saw nothing but ripples. Then, something moved. A pale shape, skin, slick and white, sliding just beneath the surface. It was slow, almost deliberate, like it knew I was watching. I backed up, the flashlight trembling in my hand. I remember whispering to myself, "What the hell is that?" And then it knocked. 3 sharp knocks from underneath the dock. Thud, thud, thud. I dropped the flashlight. It rolled off the side and splashed into the water. The knocking stopped. I bolted back to the cabin and locked the door. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the latch. I turned off every light and just stood there, staring through the window at the dock. It was pitch dark now, but I could still make out the faint outline of it against the water. I stood there for maybe 10 minutes, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. Then I saw movement. A figure was crawling onto the dock from underneath. It wasn't standing upright. It moved low, dragging itself forward with its arms. Its skin looked gray and wet, hair hanging in strings. It paused halfway, like it was sniffing the air, then turned its head toward the cabin. Even from that distance, I swear I could see its eyes. They glowed faintly, like the reflection of a flashlight. Except there was no light. I backed away from the window and didn't move for the rest of the night. I sat on the floor, gripping my phone, ready to call anyone, if I heard the door creak. But nothing happened. When the sun finally rose, I forced myself to look outside again. The dock was empty. No footprints, no damage. Just my fishing rod lying there, snapped clean in half. I packed my things that morning and left. Haven't been back since. 2 weeks later, my cousin, who lives near the cabin, called me. He said some hikers found something strange by the shore. He sent me a photo. It was my flashlight, the one that had fallen into the water. Only now, it was resting perfectly on the dock. Dry, batteries still working. And next to it, scratched into the wood, were 3 small words, "Come back down." I used to work as a wildlife officer in Oregon. Most of my job involved long hours patrolling remote lakes and checking for illegal fishing or hunting. I loved it. The solitude, the scenery, the stillness of nature. But there's one night I wish I could erase from my memory completely. It was late October, cold and misty. The kind of weather where the fog clings low to the ground and sound doesn't carry far. My radio crackled with a call about illegal fishing happening near a restricted area of Crater Lake. A fisherman had been spotted casting lines after midnight, ignoring posted signs. I grabbed my flashlight and headed down the narrow trail that led to the water. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, and the forest was almost pitch black. You could barely see 5 feet ahead. Every step crunched over frost and leaves. When I reached the clearing, I saw the lake smooth, dark, and completely still. It looked like a sheet of glass stretching into nothingness. And there, standing at the edge of the dock, was a man. He was tall, wearing a long gray raincoat, the hood pulled up. He had a fishing rod in one hand, and in the other, a lantern that flickered dimly. The yellow light shimmered across the water in broken lines. I called out, "Sir, this area is closed after dark." He didn't react, just kept casting the line slowly, reeling it back in. I walked closer, my boots thudding softly on the wood. "Sir?" I said, "This area is restricted. I'm gonna need you to pack up and leave." That's when he spoke. His voice was low and calm. "They're biting tonight," he said. I frowned. "What?" He turned his head slightly, just enough for me to see his face. His skin was pale and wet-looking, like he'd been standing in the rain for hours, but it hadn't rained that night. "They only come up when it's quiet," he said. "You scare them when you talk." I told him again that he needed to leave, stepping closer. He didn't move. He just kept slowly reeling in his line, eyes locked on the water. Then the line went tight. The rod bent sharply, like he'd hooked something massive. The sound of the reel spinning echoed across the lake. I could hear the tension in the line, straining, stretching. "Big one tonight," he whispered. I stepped back, You need to stop before you fall in." He didn't listen. The pull grew stronger, the line cutting deep into the water. Then, without warning, something yanked back. Hard. The man stumbled forward. His lantern swung wildly and fell, hitting the dock with a clatter before rolling into the lake. The flame hissed out in a burst of steam. He was now half kneeling, gripping the rod so tight his knuckles looked white. I reached forward to help him, but he snapped his head toward me, and the look on his face froze me in place. His eyes weren't normal. They were pitch black, reflecting nothing. His mouth hung slightly open, like he wanted to speak but couldn't form the words. And then whatever was on the other end of that line pulled again, this time harder. The man was yanked off his feet, sliding toward the edge of the dock. I grabbed for his coat, but he was too strong. Or maybe something else was pulling harder. He hit the water with a splash and vanished into the darkness. I shouted, shining my flashlight into the lake, but all I could see were ripples. The water was calm again within seconds. Too calm. I radioed for backup immediately. 2 other officers arrived about 30 minutes later. We searched the shoreline for hours, calling his name, scanning with flashlights. Nothing. No bubbles, no movement, no sign of him. Around 4 a.m., one of the officers shouted from further down the bank, "Hey! Over here!" We ran toward him. He was pointing at something caught on a cluster of reeds near the shore. It was a fishing rod, the same kind the man had been holding. The line was still cast out into the water, tight, like something was still hooked. We followed it to where it disappeared into the fog. The officer tugged the line gently, trying to reel it in, but it wouldn't budge. Then, slowly, something began to rise. At first it looked like a large branch, slick and dark, but as it came closer, we saw skin, flesh, hair. It wasn't human. Not fully. The thing broke the surface, suspended by the fishing line tangled around it. Its face was twisted, half rotten, eyes bulging open. Its mouth hung wide, gills visible under what used to be a jawline. The officer screamed and dropped the rod. The creature sank instantly, disappearing into the black. We all backed away, silent, terrified. None of us spoke for almost a full minute. When we finally looked down again, the line was slack. It had been cut. Later that morning, a dive team arrived to search the area. They found the man's raincoat floating near the dock, but no body. What they did find was the hook. It was still on the line, bent completely out of shape. The dive lid told me afterward that it looked like something had bitten through the steel. Not broke, ene, menos beiten. I filed my report and went home, but I couldn't stop thinking about what I saw. I told myself it had to be an illusion, something that rose from the bottom of the lake. Maybe a carcass, maybe debris. But a few nights later, I got a call. It was the same dive lead. He sounded shaken. "You're not gonna believe this," he said. "We ran sonar scans of the lake bottom." He paused for a long moment. "There's something down there," he said. "Something big. That moves." I asked what he meant, but he just said one last thing before hanging up. "Don't ever go near that lake again." That was years ago. I've since quit the job, moved out of Oregon, tried to forget. But I still keep that flashlight from that night in my closet. It doesn't work anymore. Batteries are dead. Every now and then, though, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I swear I see a faint glow coming from it. And when I listen closely, I can still hear the sound of water dripping. Like something's waiting to be caught again.